Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to speak to the part of you that has ever felt shattered by love, blindsided by someone's silence, or broken by the collapse of something you thought would last forever. Just like nations face unexpected attacks that shake their very foundations, we too experience emotional shocks that expose our deepest vulnerabilities. But within that collapse lies an opportunity, a powerful moment of rebirth, of rediscovery, and of rising stronger than ever before. This isn't just about heartbreak. It's about reclaiming your self-worth, rewriting your story, and becoming someone who doesn't just survive, but evolves. Even the strongest walls can fall in minutes. We saw it happen in real time when Israel, renowned for its unmatched defense systems, a nation that had built its reputation on being nearly impenetrable, watched those very defenses collapse within moments. And as shocking as that was, on a global scale, it reflects something deeply personal that many of us have lived through in our own quiet, emotional wars. You think your relationship is strong. You think the connection you've built is unbreakable. Maybe you've invested years, love, trust, intimacy, your whole identity, and then one conversation, one shift, one moment, and it's all gone. The illusion of safety vanishes. We often walk through relationships like we're protected by a force field. We get used to the rituals, the daily check-ins, the feeling that someone is there, someone who sees us, who validates us, who makes us feel wanted. That illusion, that perceived protection becomes our emotional defense system. But what happens when it fails? What happens when they walk away without warning, or worse, stay physically present but emotionally abandon us long before the actual good? That collapse you feel isn't just heartbreak, it's disorientation. It's a kind of shock your nervous system doesn't know how to process. And yet, here's the brutal and beautiful truth. It is in that collapse that we begin to understand what we were really standing on. Because when the structure falls, when the comfort and routine crumble, all you're left with is your actual foundation. And for many, that's when they realize it wasn't very strong at all. Not because they weren't good enough, but because they had placed their sense of worth in something that was never designed to hold it. Love can be a beautiful addition to your life, but it was never meant to become your life. You are not supposed to pour all of your value into another person's ability to stay. Because what if they leave? What if they falter? What if they collapse? Then you fall with them. And that's the part we're no longer available for. This moment, though painful, is the moment you begin again, but differently. This time, you build your worth from the inside out. You begin to strengthen your emotional infrastructure, not to keep love out, but to make sure that next time it comes in, it meets someone who knows they were already whole. So when someone pulls away, it might hurt, but it won't destroy. Because the real strength doesn't come from who stays, it comes from who you are when they go. Iran's unexpected move didn't just catch Israel off guard, it caught the entire world off guard. It was bold, it was unthinkable, and it shattered the belief that everything was under control. And that's exactly what a breakup feels like when it comes out of nowhere. One day, things feel fine, even if slightly off. You're managing, you're adapting, you're believing in the version of the relationship you've invested in. And then, without warning, it hits. A message, a confession, a silence that never ends. And just like that, everything changes. That kind of shock feels violent, not physically, but emotionally, because it doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes your entire sense of reality. It forces you to look back and question every word, every moment, every signal you thought you understood. The shock isn't just about losing someone. It's about realizing you may not have seen them clearly at all. that the story you were holding on to was one-sided or incomplete or built on hope instead of truth. But here's what most people don't understand. That shock is also a gift. It's brutal, yes, but it's also the moment where all the lies, all the denial, all the bargaining gets burned away. It clears the field, and in that raw, exposed moment, there's clarity. You finally see the reality you were avoiding. You see the mismatch, you see the imbalance, you see your own neglect of self, hidden beneath your effort to keep something alive that was already withering. When a country gets attacked in a way it didn't expect, it doesn't just feel violated, it has to change. It has to update its strategy. It has to stop assuming that the same systems will work tomorrow just because they worked yesterday. And it's the same for you. The person who shocked you with their exit, they forced you into an evolution. They forced you to stop living on autopilot, to stop relying on their presence as proof of your value. You don't need to see this pain as failure. You need to see it as your mind and heart being shaken awake. Not because you're weak, but because your love was real. But now that love has to be redirected. That energy has to return home to you. Because the lesson in the shock isn't don't trust again. It's trust yourself first. Trust your gut when something feels off. Trust your strength when you feel abandoned. Trust your ability to adapt, evolve, and rise. The world was caught off guard. So were you. But while nations scramble for defense, you're building something even stronger. The kind of self-worth that doesn't shatter when someone else's choices change. When your heart feels exposed, when everything you thought was protecting you disappears, that's when you finally discover what you were really relying on. You think you're strong. You think you're independent. You think you're grounded. And maybe you are in many ways, but then someone leaves, or they pull away, or they stay, but no longer show up for you in the way they once did. And suddenly, you're not okay, not just sad, not just missing them, but undone. You start questioning everything, not just about them, but about yourself. That's when it hits you. You weren't just in love with the person, you were depending on them for emotional safety, for identity, for affirmation. Their presence gave you a sense of being worthy, of being seen, of being enough. And the second that presence disappears, you feel stripped bare. It's not just heartbreak. It's a sense of being unanchored. And that's not because you're weak. It's because, like so many of us, you were leaning too hard on someone else to tell you who you are. It's easy to believe we built a life of our own when we're in a relationship, but the truth often only reveals itself in the silence that follows a breakup. That's when we start to realize just how many of our emotional needs were being outsourced, how much of our confidence was tied to whether someone else wanted us. We tell ourselves we're fine, we're whole, we're independent, until the moment that person stops texting, stops calling, stops showing up. And in that pause, in that stillness, we face a kind of inner reckoning. But here's where the real shift begins. That moment of exposure isn't meant to shame you, it's meant to show you. It shows you the places that still need healing, the wounds that are still open, the spaces within that still crave love, attention, and care. And not from someone else, but from you. That pain is trying to guide you back to yourself. So you start small. You start by being honest about what you were giving away, your time, your peace, your boundaries, and why. You start noticing the ways you lost yourself in trying to hold on to someone else. And then slowly you begin rebuilding, not by proving anything to anyone, not by posting highlight reels of how fine you are, but by looking inward and creating a version of yourself that doesn't need external proof to feel enough. You may have thought love made you whole, but the truth is, love only enhances the wholeness you already own. And if someone's absence breaks you, it wasn't love you lost, it was your connection to yourself. And that's exactly where your power begins again. When something collapses, whether it's a nation's defense system or the emotional structure of a relationship, the immediate instinct is to retaliate, to react, to show the world, or that one person, that you're not weak, that you still have power. And in the aftermath of heartbreak, that instinct can feel overwhelming. You want them to see you glowing, thriving, completely unfazed. You want to prove that losing you was the worst mistake they ever made. But real healing doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from curated posts or subtle digs. It comes from what you choose to do with the silence they left behind. Rebuilding isn't about retaliation. It's not about looking back and trying to teach them a lesson. It's about facing forward and realizing this is your moment to reinvent. You don't rise by clinging to the past or trying to manipulate how they perceive you now. You rise when you begin focusing so deeply on your own evolution that their presence or absence becomes irrelevant to your direction. You see, when you base your healing on proving a point to someone else, you're still giving them control. You're still making them the center of your emotional universe. They're the reason you're getting up early, going to the gym, chasing your goals. It might look empowering on the surface, but underneath, you're still chained to the same validation loop, and the freedom you're craving can't live there. True reinvention is quiet. It's not dramatic or attention-seeking. It's steady. It's private. It's rooted in the kind of peace that doesn't need applause. It happens when you start living for your own alignment instead of their regret. When you realize that your glow-up isn't something they even need to witness, because it's not about them. You start to ask better questions. Who am I without their voice in my head? What do I want, not just in love, but in life? What have I been delaying, dimming, or denying in myself just to keep someone else comfortable? And then you act, not out of spite, not to prove, but to evolve. You start saying yes to yourself in ways you never did before. You start nurturing the parts of you that used to be silenced. You stop being afraid to take up space without asking permission. And what's beautiful is that when you rebuild from this place, everything changes. Not just your confidence, but the energy you attract. You stop settling for crumbs, for excuses, for halfway love, because you've learned that being alone is never the worst thing. It's being with someone who makes you feel alone that really hurts. So no, you don't need revenge. You need a life so deeply aligned with who you truly are that no loss can take it away. And no past version of you would dare trade places with who you've become. Shock can shake the world. It did when Israel's defenses fell faster than anyone thought possible. It sent ripples through global headlines, military analyses, and political debates. But that's what shock does. It doesn't ask permission. It enters your life, cracks the ground beneath your feet, and demands that you look at what's left standing. And while the world reacts in chaos, you, when it's emotional, when it's personal, are left sitting in the stillness, wondering how something that felt so stable could fall apart so fast. But here's what no one tells you. Shock doesn't just destroy, it activates. It doesn't only break you open, it calls you forward. Because in those moments when you feel most dismantled, you're also the most available to change. When everything familiar is stripped away, you're not bound by the same patterns. You're no longer numbed by routine or dulled by comfort. You're exposed, yes, but in that exposure, you're also free. Free to choose differently. Free to see yourself with fresh eyes. Free to stop accepting less. Pain has a way of grabbing your attention in ways peace never could. It snaps you out of autopilot. It forces you to sit with the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the doubts you silenced, the boundaries you bent, the instincts you ignored. And maybe that's what needed to happen. Maybe this wasn't the universe punishing you. Maybe it was life redirecting you. Because sometimes the most powerful transformations don't come after quiet reflection. They come after you've been shaken to your core and left with no choice but to rise. You begin to notice things differently. You stop chasing temporary highs just to feel loved. You stop negotiating with people who only show up halfway. You stop performing for someone's approval and start showing up fully for your own growth. And people feel it. They feel your shift, even if you don't say a word. Because nothing is louder than someone who has reclaimed their self-worth and no longer seeks it in another. You start walking differently. You speak more slowly. You protect your peace like it's sacred. Because now it is. You've been through the fire. And while others may only see the version of you that came after, you'll never forget what it took to get here. You didn't just survive something, you used it. You let it stretch you, refine you, humble you, and rebuild you. So yes, shock can shake the world, but it can also awaken you into a strength you didn't know you had. And once that strength is activated, there's no going back to who you used to be. Your self-worth isn't built in comfort, it's forged in collapse. That truth is hard to swallow because we all crave peace, consistency, and emotional safety. But the version of you that's truly powerful, the one who knows what she's worth and refuses to settle, isn't born when everything is going right. She's born when everything falls apart. It's in the heartbreak, the silence, the unanswered questions, and the moments where you're forced to sit with your own pain that your real self begins to emerge. Not the version of you that someone else needed, not the version that molded herself to be chosen, but the version that exists without needing to perform or prove anything. That version doesn't need a relationship to feel valuable. She's whole by default, not because someone stayed, but because she stayed true to herself through the storm. When someone walks away from you, or when they fail to show up for you, it can feel like a rejection of your very being, but it's not. It's often a rejection of the role you are playing, a role you may have outgrown. And when that role ends, yes, it hurts. Yes, it's disorienting, but it also gives you the space to meet yourself as you are, stripped of expectation, stripped of performance, and finally, free. Sometimes collapse is the only thing powerful enough to force you into self-examination. You stop pretending, you stop distracting, you stop avoiding the reality that maybe you were giving too much, accepting too little, and slowly disappearing in the name of love. Love. And in that collapse, you begin to rebuild, not to get them back, not to be noticed, not to make anyone regret losing you, but to become someone you deeply respect. That's where confidence is born. Not in getting attention, but in not needing it. Not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself over and over without apology. You don't just survive the loss. You emerge with sharper boundaries, deeper wisdom, and a new standard for how you allow yourself to be loved. And what's even more beautiful is that the person who rises from that collapse no longer fears loss in the same way. You're not walking through life begging to be kept. You're not handing over your peace just to be accepted. You've earned your self-respect through the hard way, and no one can take that from you again. So if you're in the middle of that collapse right now, if everything you built feels like it's crumbling, know this: you're not breaking down. You're being rebuilt. The foundation you're forming now will carry you further than any love that required you to shrink ever could.